Hello there, I'm Karim Fazakri and you're watching All 24 News, world news program broadcasting to you live from the capital Algiers. Now the headlines. In Syria, Al-Shara signs agreement with the SDF moving towards army integration. Government now fully controls border crossings, oil and gas fields, and officials reaffirm national unity and sovereignty. Next, in Sudan, ICC investigation into recent massacres continues. UN warns of potential repeat of al-Fashir atrocities, and Khartoum government urges diplomatic missions to resume work. Also in our news, mysterious deaths raise fears over regime assassinations in Morocco. Activist groups condemn growing systematic repression, and courts remain stalled over lawyers' law dispute. And later on, 8 European nations caution against harming NATO ties and warn of a risky slide in Greenland. Trump's tariffs labeled blackmail by world leaders, and U.S. House rules out military action. The details are right up. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, Ahmed al-Shara, head of the Syrian Transitional Government, has signed a ceasefire deal with the Syrian Democratic Forces, paving the way for their full integration into the Syrian army. This comes after 2 days of heavy clashes along the Euphrates River. Speaking to reporters after meeting with U.S. envoy Tom Barak, al-Shara emphasized that the agreement calls for an immediate comprehensive ceasefire across all fronts and points of contact.
I'm now calling at this moment for a complete ceasefire. I also urge our Arab tribes there to adhere to calm and restraint and to allow space for the gradual implementation of the provisions of the agreement until we reach full stability across Syria. Today we were scheduled to meet with Mr. Mazloum Abdi, but due to weather conditions, the meeting was postponed until tomorrow. In order to reduce tensions and calm the situation, we were compelled to sign the agreement through communications, after which we will follow up on the remaining details and provisions of the agreement.
In addition, all military and security forces of the SDF are set to be fully integrated into the structures of the Syrian Ministries of Defense and Interior.
Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa provinces are to be handed over administratively and militarily in full and immediately to the Syrian government. This includes the takeover of all civilian institutions and facilities, along with the issuance of immediate decisions to confirm current employees within the relevant Syrian state ministries. The government also commits to not targeting SDF employees and fighters or the civil administration in the 2 provinces, and to integrating all civilian institutions in Hasaka province into Syrian state institutions and administrative structures.
Under the new agreement, the Syrian government will take full control of the region's border crossings as well as its oil and gas fields.
The Syrian government has taken over all border crossings and oil and gas fields in the region, securing them through regular forces to ensure that state resources are restored to the Syrian state. This also includes the integration of all military and security personnel of the SDF into the structures of the Syrian Ministries of Defense and Interior on an individual basis, following the required security vetting. Those integrated will be granted official military ranks as well as their financial and logistical entitlements in accordance with regulations, while ensuring the protection of the specific characteristics of Kurdish areas.
According to a statement from the Syrian presidency during Ahmed al-Shara meeting on Sunday with U.S. Special Envoy Thomas Barak, al-Shara highlighted the importance of rebuilding Syria with the participation of all Syrians while continuing coordination to combat terrorism. The talks also focused on boosting economic cooperation between Syria and the United States and reviewing the latest regional developments. U.S. Special Envoy to Syria Thomas Barak confirmed Sunday that the deal signed by Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara and SDF commander Mazloum Abdi marks a pivotal turning point. In a post on X, Barack highlighted that former adversaries have chosen partnership over division, praising the efforts of both sides in reaching an agreement that opens the door to renewed dialogue and cooperation toward a unified Syria. Moving on to another topic now. In occupied Palestine, Zionist forces continued intensive airstrikes across the Gaza Strip on Sunday in what Palestinian officials say is a persistent violation of the ceasefire. Palestinian media reported heavy strikes on the city of Rafah, while occupation military vehicles fired live ammunition east of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Meanwhile, U.S. media report that President Donald Trump is demanding that countries joining the peace board he chairs on the Gaza Strip contribute at least $1 billion. Sources say the 3-year membership applies to nations contributing over $1 billion in the first year, with council decisions made by majority vote, but still subject to Trump's approval.
Strike the terrorist organization again.
Still in Gaza, Doctors Without Borders has raised concerns over the possible suspension of its services in the Strip, citing measures that threaten the continuation of its work on the ground. More details with Zahra Farjani now.
Doctors Without Borders may end its operations in Gaza in March 2026. The organization has once again condemned the decision by the Zionist entity to ban 37 humanitarian organizations from operating in the Gaza Strip, an enclave devastated by more than 2 years of genocide that has pushed the healthcare system to the brink of collapse. As the organization's main operational hub, the NGO directly manages medical centers and is internationally active in Gaza for many years. Doctors Without Borders supports more than 5 hospitals, most notably Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, which serves recognized for its expertise in treating severe and complex burns, fractures, and multiple injuries, making it one of the most critical humanitarian actors in the enclave.
Doctors Without Borders is a well-known organization. It provides us with medical treatment, medicines and health supplies. The real disaster is that there are no alternative options, only a few medical points remain. This makes the situation extremely difficult and will lead to a catastrophe for the injured and the wounded.
In a statement released on Sunday, Doctors Without Borders said the Zionist occupation authorities had suspended the organization's registration under new regulations governing humanitarian work in the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank, without specifying a timeline for the decision. Thousands of patients and wounded civilians in Gaza rely on the specialized medical services provided by Doctors Without Borders. Growing concern is mounting among patients due to the lack of alternatives capable of filling the gap should the organization be forced to suspend its operations.
In Gaza, our total dependence after the war has become humanitarian and international aid. Most people rely entirely on the assistance that comes from international organizations. If the number of these organizations is reduced, instead of reducing them, we are actually calling for an increase. Reducing their presence will inevitably lead to a rise in humanitarian suffering.
The organization rejected claims by the occupation authorities that its departure from Gaza would have no significant impact, describing such assertions as completely false. Doctors Without Borders also warned that Gaza's healthcare system is on the verge of total collapse due to the ongoing Zionist genocidal war, as the need for life-saving medical care continues to surge.
And in the occupied West Bank, Zionist forces carried out widespread arrests and raids on Sunday across multiple cities and towns. Palestinian sources report that 16 people, including former prisoners, were detained in governorates including Nablus, Bethlehem, Tulkarm, and Ramallah. Meanwhile, Zionist settlers attacked the Bedouin community of Kharbet al-Sidra near Mekmas, injuring several Palestinians and foreign supporters while setting homes on fire and destroying property, according to footage from the scene.
حاولنا ندافع عن حالنا بس عدد كبير.
We are tired to defend ourselves, but there were many. We tried to hold out, so we could at least escape the area and rescue our neighbor, who was in critical condition. We managed to get away and took people with us to save our neighbors. It was a very difficult situation.
بقى وضع صعب.
امبارح في الليل على الساعة تقريبا 10.
Last night around 10 p.m., a group of settlers, about 60 or 70 people, attacked the Bedouin community of Khalat al-Sidra. They set fire to more than 6 homes and assaulted Yusuf Zwahra and his wife, residents of the village. We transported them to the hospital. Their condition is critical. 4 inactivists present in the area were also attacked and hospitalized. These settler attacks are relentless and constitute a clear attempt to expel the residents of this community.
In Sudan, military sources report that the armed forces carried out airstrikes Sunday in the northwest of Bara and across southern and western Kordofan. Fierce clashes also erupted between the popular forces allied with the army and what authorities described as terrorist militia. The fighting followed attacks on rapid support forces positions and the looting and burning of civilian homes reportedly aimed at terrorizing local populations. Meanwhile, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, confirmed on Sunday that the International Criminal Court continues its investigation into crimes in Darfur. Speaking from Port Sudan, Turk highlighted reports of extrajudicial killings by the Rapid Support Forces during attacks on al-Fashir, as well as indications of systematic sexual violence used as a weapon of war. He stressed the urgent need to hold those responsible accountable and bring perpetrators to international justice.
Sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war. This is a war crime, and we have more and more indications that this is widespread and systematic. I also heard accounts of widespread summary executions by RSF during the offensive on al-Fashir for revenge, for suspected affiliation with the SAF or its allied joint forces.
UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk also warned on Sunday against a repeat of al-Fashir scenario in Kordofan. Speaking from Port Sudan after visiting several cities, his first trip since the start of the conflict, Turk described the suffering of Sudanese civilians as hellish. He also called attacks on vital infrastructure potential war crimes and expressed deep concern over the growing militarization of Sudanese society.
The Kordofan states are extremely volatile, with relentless military engagement, heavy shelling, drone bombardments, and airstrikes causing widespread destruction and collapse of essential services. Advances towards Kaduli by the RSF and SPLM-N and continued displacement of civilians from the besieged city, all in the context of extreme food insecurity, with famine conditions confirmed in Kaduli and risk of famine in other areas, including Dilinj.
For his part, Sudanese Prime Minister Camille Idris has called on diplomatic missions, UN organizations and foreign agencies to resume operations from Khartoum. During a tour of service facilities in the capital, Idris highlighted the government's commitment to improving public services and supporting tourism, stressing that life in Khartoum has returned to normal, an environment he says is now ready to welcome back international missions.
Our state does not discriminate between one region and another. We strive to build a truly federal system where citizens in Hargeisa, Puntland, and Mogadishu feel they are equal partners in power and wealth. Justice is the foundation for the continuation of this state. I extend a sincere invitation to all our brothers who have disagreement with the federal government. Dialogue is the only solution.
Sudan's Emergency Operations Room reports that 103 civilians, mostly women, children, and herders, have been killed, with 88 others injured in ongoing attacks by the Rapid Support Forces along the Chadian border. Humanitarian agencies say the RSF is targeting 8 border areas, burning villages and looting livestock, forcing around 18,000 people to flee. Authorities are urgently calling on local and international organizations to support displaced populations facing an uncertain fate amid continuous drone strikes and bombings. For his part, Chadian President Mahamadou Idriss Déby Itno has warned of an unprecedented influx of Sudanese refugees into his country. Speaking with UN High Commissioner for Refugees Barham Ahmad Saleh, Déby said Chad is currently hosting 2.3 million Sudanese refugees, describing the situation as not only a financial burden, but also a growing security challenge for the state and local communities. He called on the UNHCR to make a qualitative shift in aid to meet the urgent needs of those fleeing the conflict in Sudan. Morocco, the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations final erupted into chaos as Senegal staged a dramatic walkout in stoppage time, protesting a late VAR decision that awarded Morocco a controversial penalty. With the score locked at goalless draw, Senegal players left the field, plunging the match into turmoil before eventually returning after more than 17 minutes. The penalty was missed by Brahim Diaz, and in extra time, Senegal struck first as Pape Gueye scored off a clever Mali assist, giving the defending champions a 1-0 lead over hosts Morocco. Two foreign nationals have died in Morocco under mysterious circumstances, raising renewed concerns over the safety of foreigners and the handling of sensitive incidents by authorities. The deaths come amid continued official silence, fueling questions about transparency, particularly given the country's history of allegations involving political assassinations and targeted liquidations. More with Yasin Rikti now.
As the Africa Cup of Nations unfolds in Morocco, doubts and criticism are growing over the safety of foreign visitors following the deaths of two foreign nationals under unexplained circumstances. A Malian journalist and a Cameroonian football supporter both died while attending the tournament, two incidents that occurred within a short time frame and under strikingly similar conditions. In the capital Rabat, Malian journalist Mohamed Soumari was found dead in his hotel room. Authorities have yet to provide a clear explanation, offering no official details on the cause of death. The lack of transparency has fueled speculation, particularly after reports emerged suggesting the journalist had been preparing to investigate sensitive issues linked to the host country. Just days later, in Marrakesh, a Cameroonian football fan was also found dead in his hotel room. Once again, authorities released only limited information, leaving key questions unanswered about how and why the death occurred. The close timing and similar circumstances of the two cases have raised concerns over security arrangements during a major continental tournament meant to celebrate African unity and football. Critics argue that the silence surrounding both deaths undermines confidence in official assurances and casts doubt on Morocco's ability to guarantee the safety of journalists and visiting supporters. As uncertainty persists, calls are mounting for independent and transparent investigations to establish the facts, respect the rights of the victims and their families, and protect the integrity of the Africa Cup of Nations. For many observers, silence and vague statements are no longer enough. These cases place the Moroccan authorities under growing moral and political pressure to provide clear answers.
Human rights groups in Morocco continue to condemn the legal actions taken against activists and defenders opposing the policies of the Makhzen regime. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights denounced violations targeting youth leaders who have been protesting since last September, citing poor living conditions, failing education and health systems, and widespread corruption.
The association denounces serious violations against Generation Z youth, describing them as judicial massacres carried out by both trial and appeal courts, which have issued hundreds of years of prison sentences against more than 1,500 young people. These trials violated fair trial standards and amounted to unprecedented judicial forces. Meanwhile, the case of victims killed by gunfire by Royal Gendarmerie members in Laguia remains marked by impunity, and no suspect has yet been arrested.
The Moroccan Association for Human Rights has condemned the ongoing suffering of activists and defenders facing systematic repression. The group criticized the continued persecution of many human rights defenders and expressed surprise at the Makhzen regime's insistence on keeping numerous political detainees behind bars.
The association condemns the systematic repression faced by human rights defenders, including ongoing arrests, prosecutions, and repeated violations on the rights to organize, assemble, and protest peacefully, alongside the continued crackdown on civil society.
Meanwhile, lawyers in Morocco have announced a week-long strike starting January 16th in a protest at provocative remarks made by the Minister of Justice. The Association of Bar Associations condemned the minister for the mocking a legal memorandum submitted to the Court of Cassation, calling it an attack on a profession essential to defending rights and upholding the rule of law. The association described the statements as irresponsible and disrespectful and announced further protests, including a major demonstration in front of Parliament in Rabat on February 6th. And back home, Algeria has announced a nearly $18 billion plan to develop and modernize its railway network. Nabil Boubaya, director of the National Agency for Studies and Monitoring of Railway Investments, said the sector has already seen a major leap in the past 6 years, with the network expanding from under 4,000 kilometers to more than 17,000. He added that trains can now run every 30 minutes, and Algeria aims to eventually connect its railways with neighboring Maghreb and African countries, while linking border trade, industrial zones, and improving mass transit for both passengers and heavy goods.
The total investment value of the program is approximately 2.4 trillion Algerian dinars. Recently, we began putting a large number of lines into operation, reaching 5,738 kilometers so far, including the Western Line. Thanks be to God, we were able to complete the works by the end of last year. Over the past 6 years, we studied 4,000 kilometers of lines that were already in operation, and we have now reached a total of 5,738 kilometers. This means we have achieved more than 1,700 kilometers of new lines that are now operational.
Moving on now to another topical development. EU ambassadors from all 27 countries are meeting on Sunday for an emergency session after President Donald Trump threatened new tariffs on Europe until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland. According to the Financial Times, European capitals are considering hitting back with 93 billion euros in tariffs or restricting American companies in response. For his part, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte confirmed Sunday that he discussed security concerns in Greenland and the Arctic with U.S. President Donald Trump. Speaking on X, Rutte said NATO continues to coordinate with the U.S. on these issues ahead of their meeting in Davos later this week, though he did not provide further details about the discussion. For her part, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called U.S. President Donald Trump's threats of trade tariffs against European countries contributing to Greenland security wrong. Speaking at a press conference in Seoul Sunday, Meloni said she had personally informed Donald Trump that the European nation's plans to send troops and strengthen security on the island are motivated purely by regional security concerns and are not directed against the United States.
I wanted to tell you that the perspective of an increase in tariffs for countries that have chosen to contribute to Greenland's security, in my view, is a mistake and I do not agree with it. I share the US presidency's focus on Greenland and the Arctic, which is a strategic area where excessive interference by actors that may be hostile but must be avoided. But I believe that, in this sense, the attention of some European countries to send troops to take part in greater security should have been understood not as an initiative directed against the United States, but rather against other actors. It seems to me that there is a problem of understanding and communication on this point. As far as I am concerned, I continue to insist on the role of NATO. It is NATO, the place where we must seek to jointly organize deterrence tools against interference that may be hostile in an obviously strategic territory.
On the same occasion, Meloni also emphasized the need for dialogue and avoiding any escalation over Greenland.
Clearly, over the course of the day, I will also speak with other European leaders. For now, a core meeting of the European Union has been organized, but I believe that at this stage it is very important to talk to one another and that it is very important to avoid an escalation because it is possible to work together to reach a result that is useful and necessary for everyone.
In another reaction, Dutch Foreign Minister David Van Wijl called President Donald Trump's threat of new tariffs on European NATO members blackmail. Speaking on Sunday, Van Wijl said Trump's actions regarding Greenland are not in the interest of NATO nor the island, highlighting European concern over the escalating tensions.
This is not how allies should treat one another, and in that sense I understand the term blackmail. We have until February 1st to present a truly united front and make it clear that we find this unacceptable. We also believe that using tariffs in this way is inappropriate.
And in another reaction, Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski urged US President Donald Trump to respect the European Union's legal framework. Sikorski stressed that the EU prohibits individual member states from imposing or accepting tariffs, emphasizing that any trade measures must apply to the bloc as a single economic entity. All right, let's get more insights on the Greenland issue, which has sent shockwaves across Europe, triggering strong outrage among European leaders. Karim Musfari.
Europe reacted swiftly and as expected to the latest tariffs announced by Washington. The decision of President Trump has sparked strong reactions across the 8 countries involved in a joint military mission in the Arctic island. The European Council expressed full solidarity with both Denmark and the people of Greenland.
The EU stands in full solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland. Dialogue remains essential and we are committed to building on the process begun already last week between the Kingdom of Denmark and the US. Tariffs will undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral. Europe will remain united, coordinated and committed to upholding its sovereignty.
US President Donald Trump warned that the tariffs would rise to 25% on June 1st and would remain in effect until a Greenland agreement is reached. Norway, one of the affected nations, described Washington's move as unacceptable.
Norway's position remains the same. We will not allow ourselves to be put under pressure, and those types of threats are unacceptable between close allies.
Other European leaders from Italy, Netherlands and France also rejected Trump's sanctions. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the security in the High North is the priority for all NATO allies, while Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez went further. He warned that the use of force to seize Greenland would be the final blow to NATO.
An American invasion of Greenland would legitimize the attempted invasion of Ukraine. If the United States uses force, it will be the death blow to NATO.
As tensions continue to rise, Europe finds itself at a critical crossroads. Its leaders have voiced unity, solidarity and firm opposition to Washington, but with Trump signaling his readiness to escalate. The central question is whether that unity will be enough to influence a standoff that is shaping up to be both long and intense.
And despite all this tension, the US House of Representatives has ruled out any military option for Greenland, favoring a diplomatic solution through dialogue. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Greenland is strategically important for Washington, while noting potential threats from other directions, a point he said U.S. President Donald Trump is aware of.
I don't foresee military intervention in Greenland. It's a small population of people, and I think diplomatic channels is the way to go, and I think the president's appointment of an envoy, but Greenland has strategic importance to us because of its geography, its placement, but not just to the U.S., but to all freedom-loving people everywhere.
Greenland, a remote icy island under Danish sovereignty, has emerged as a key hotspot in the global struggle for strategic resources. Beneath its vast ice sheets lie rare minerals, energy resources, and fresh water, making the territory a focal point in the international race for minerals, energy, and strategic influence. Here's Salman Asib.
Beneath the thick layers of ice that cover most of its territory, Greenland, the world's largest island, harbors vast natural wealth that has today made it the object of strong interest by U.S. President Donald Trump, who has even expressed a desire to buy it, if necessary, by force. An island that appears remote and frozen is in reality one of the richest untapped regions in the world. In figures and statistics, Greenland is estimated to hold around 36.1 million tons rare earth minerals, vital materials used in advanced technology and modern weapons. It also contains about 1.1 billion tons of uranium and zinc ores, placing it 8th globally in terms of the size of these strategic reserves. In Greenland, the Tenbreeze project represents a major strategic asset on its own, accounting for nearly 27% of global rare earth reserves, minerals that attract Trump's interests as part of efforts to control them and reduce external dependence. Greenland's wealth does not stop there. Estimates indicate it possesses about 18.43 billion barrels of oil and natural gas equivalent, in addition to 25 other strategic materials and vast resources of fresh water at a time when water has become a strategic resource no less important than energy. These figures clearly explain Trump's insistence on Greenland. The issue is not merely an icy island in the Arctic, but enormous resources capable of reshaping global balances in energy, industry, and even military supremacy.
And finally, it's time to catch up on other news stories in the News in Brief with Sofian Kenturi.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 2 people were killed and dozens injured, including children, in Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure, adding that Moscow launched over 1,300 drones, 1,050 guided bombs, and 29 missiles this week. Meanwhile, Russian authorities in Zaporizhia reported a Ukrainian drone attack on energy lines, causing power outages in areas under Russian control. Algeria's Chief of Staff of National People's Army, Army General Said Chingreha, began an official visit to Qatar to take part in the 9th edition of a Doha International Maritime Defense Exhibition and Conference. He was received on arrival at Hamad International Airport by Major General Hamad bin Ahmed al-Nuaimi, advisor to Qatar's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of State for Defense Affairs, along with Algeria's ambassador to Qatar, Salah Attiyah. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud said that northeastern Somalia is a full member state of the Federal Republic of Somalia, enjoying all rights granted under the federal system, and is governed on the basis of reconciliation, dialogue, and the will of the people. Guinea's newly elected president, Mamadi Doumbouya, was formally sworn in at a ceremony in the Stade Général Lansana Conté in Nongo, marking a historic shift from 4 years of military transition to constitutional rule after his decisive victory in December 28th presidential elections.
And that will be the end of tonight's news. To catch up on anything you missed or get the latest updates, head over to our social media channels as well as our website. From all of us here at All 24 News, I'm Kieran Zachary. Thanks for watching and do take care.